Hey guys, tonight we are going to do something that sounds physically impossible and logistically ridiculous. We are going back to a time before refrigerators, before freezers, and before that little machine in your kitchen door that spits out crushed ice with a loud grinding noise. We are going to watch a stubborn man in a very thick coat try to convince the world that he can cut up a frozen pond in Massachusetts, put it on a wooden boat, and sail it across the boiling hot equator, all the way to India without it turning into warm soup. You probably believe this is a standard history of trade, but really, it is a story about the audacity of selling winter to people who have never seen snow. Before you get too comfortable and possibly fall asleep halfway through, tap like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy this odd mix of boredom and history. It keeps the channel alive, and the story's just sleepy enough to help you drift off again next time. Go ahead and let me know where you are listening from and what time it is in your part of the world. I always like seeing the mix of time zones scrolling by in the comments. Now, dim the lights, let the world outside grow quiet, and turn on a fan if you like that soft, steady hum in the background. Let your shoulders loosen and your breathing slow. This is your time to drift. No rush, no deadlines, no noise. Just you, a little warmth in the air, and the faint whisper of history waiting to unfold. So, settle in, and let's ease gently into tonight's journey together. You are standing on the edge of a frozen world. The air here is sharp and biting, the kind of cold that finds its way through the seams of your wool coat and settles deep in your bones. It is the winter of 1805, and you are just outside of Boston, Massachusetts. The sky above is a flat, pale gray, heavy with the promise of more snow, and the landscape around you is painted in silence. There are no cars humming in the distance, no planes cutting through the clouds, and no electric street lamps buzzing to life as the afternoon fades. There is only the sound of the wind rattling the bare branches of the oak trees, and the crunch of your boots on the hard, packed earth. You look out over the pond in front of you. It is a vast, flat expanse of white, stretching out to the tree line on the far shore. To anyone else living in New England in the early 19th century, this frozen pond is nothing special. In fact, it is a bit of a nuisance. It means the fishing is harder, the washing is colder, and travel is slower. Winter here is a season of endurance, a time to huddle by the fire, eat salted meats, and wait for the spring thaw to turn the world back into mud and color. But you are not standing here alone. Standing next to you, wrapped in a heavy frock coat and looking out at the ice with a strange intensity, is a young man named Frederic Tudor. He does not see a nuisance. He does not see a frozen obstacle. You watch his eyes scan the surface of the lake, calculating and measuring. Where everyone else sees frozen water, Frederic Tudor sees a gold mine. He sees a luxury product that grows for free, right here in the backyard of Massachusetts. He turns to you, his breath puffing out in white clouds like steam from a kettle, and gestures toward the ice. He believes that this cold, this biting, miserable temperature that everyone complains about, is actually a commodity. He believes he can take this frozen pond, put it on a ship, and sell it to the wealthy plantation owners in the Caribbean, and eventually to the scorching heat of Calcutta, India. You have to admit, standing here in the biting wind, the idea sounds completely absurd. It sounds like a joke you would tell after too many mugs of cider. You imagine trying to carry a snowball in your pocket on a hot summer day. It lasts about 5 minutes before you just have a wet pocket. Now imagine that pocket is a wooden ship and the summer day is a 4-month voyage across 2 oceans, crossing the equator twice. The physics of it just do not make sense to your mind. Ice melts. That is what it does. It is the one thing ice is famous for doing. But Frederic is not listening to the logic of physics. He is listening to the logic of ambition. You walk with him away from the pond's edge, tramping through the snow back toward the warmth of the main house. The snow is deep here, coming up past your ankles, and every step takes a little extra effort. It is a slow, rhythmic trudge. The house ahead is a large, sturdy structure, built to withstand these brutal winters. Smoke rises lazily from the brick chimneys, drifting up to join the gray sky. Inside, you know there is a fire crackling in the hearth, and the smell of roasted meat and heavy bread. It is the holiday season, and the house is full of people. As you enter the warmth of the drawing room, the sudden change in temperature makes your face tingle. You unbutton your heavy coat and find a spot near the corner of the room. The air is thick with conversation and the clinking of glass. Frederic's brother, William, is there. He is the more practical one, or at least the one who pretends to be practical while indulging Frederic's wild ideas. Historians still argue whether it was Frederic or William who first said the words out loud, jokingly suggesting they should harvest the ice from their pond and ship it to the tropics. But regardless of who said it, Frederic is the one who stopped laughing. You watch the guests at the party. They are holding drinks, but the drinks are not cold. In 1805, a drink is the temperature of the room, or it is hot. If you live in a cellar, maybe your water is cool. If you live in the tropics, your water is tepid. The concept of a truly cold drink on a hot day is something that belongs to kings and emperors, not regular merchants. Frederic moves through the room, talking to people about his plan. You can see the reactions on their faces. They smile politely, the way you smile at a child who says they are going to fly to the moon by flapping their arms. One merchant, a man with bushy sideburns and a waistcoat that looks a little too tight, laughs out loud. He tells Frederic that he might as well try to sell darkness to the sun. He calls it slippery speculation. The room chuckles. It is a good line. You see Frederic's jaw tighten. He does not find it funny. The more they laugh, the more serious he becomes. You realize that this is not just about money for him anymore. It is about proving that he sees something the rest of the world is blind to. He is stubborn. You get the sense that if you told him he couldn't walk through a brick wall, he would spend the next 10 years rubbing his forehead against the masonry just to prove you wrong. Later that evening, the party dies down. The guests leave, their carriages crunching away over the frozen driveway. The house grows quiet. You sit by the fire, watching the embers glow and fade. Frederic is sitting at a desk nearby, scratching away with a quill pen on a piece of parchment. The sound is rhythmic and dry. Scratch, dip, scratch, dip. He is making a list. You lean over to see what he is writing. It is a list of expenses. He needs a ship. He needs tools. He needs men. He needs sawdust. You look at the item on the list, sawdust. It seems out of place. Why would an ice merchant need the dust from a sawmill? You watch him tap the pen against his chin. He is thinking about insulation. He knows that if he just piles ice into a ship, it will melt. He needs to wrap it in something. He needs a blanket for the ice. You think about the irony of putting a blanket on something to keep it cold, when usually you use a blanket to keep yourself warm. But the principle is the same. Trapped air. He needs to create a barrier between the tropical heat and his precious winter cargo. The next few weeks pass in a blur of cold, gray days. You follow Frederic down to the docks in Boston. The harbor is a busy, smelly, chaotic place. Even in winter, the smell of tar, rotting seaweed, and wet wood hangs heavy in the air. The water in the harbor is dark and choppy, slapping against the pilings of the pier. You watch as Frederic tries to charter a ship. This is harder than it looks. Most ship captains are superstitious men, or at least very practical ones. They carry cotton, sugar, molasses, spices, tea. They understand these cargoes. If you spill sugar, you have a sticky mess. If you spill ice, you have water. But there is a deeper fear. You overhear a captain talking to Frederic near a stack of crates. The captain is a weathered man with a face like old leather. He shakes his head vigorously. He explains that he cannot carry ice. He believes that the cold from the ice will seep into the wood of the ship's hull. He thinks it will make the wood brittle, or worse, that the ice will melt, the water will slosh around, and the sudden shift in weight will capsize the vessel. Or, perhaps most frightening of all to a sailor, the melting ice will create so much fresh water in the hold that it will rot the timbers from the inside out. Frederic argues. He waves his hands. He offers more money. The captain walks away. You watch Frederic stand there on the dock, the wind whipping his coat around his legs. He looks frustrated, but not defeated. He simply turns and walks to the next ship. Finally, he decides that if no one will rent him a ship, he will have to buy one. It is a massive financial risk. He is spending money he doesn't really have, relying on loans and the goodwill of family. He purchases a brig named the Favorite. It is not a new ship. It has seen better days. You look at it bobbing in the water. It looks small compared to the ocean it has to cross. The paint is peeling slightly on the hull, and the rigging looks a little tired. But it is his. Now the real work begins. You travel back to the pond with him. It is time for the harvest. In these early days, there is no specialized machinery. There are no conveyor belts or steam engines. There are just men, saws, and gravity. You stand on the bank and watch the workforce assemble. They are local farmers mostly, men who have nothing to do in the winter when their fields are frozen. They wear thick wool trousers and heavy mittens. They look at the ice with skepticism. To them, ice is something you slip on. It is something that freezes your water bucket in the morning. It is not a crop. You watch them step out onto the ice. It groans softly under their weight, a deep, resonant sound that travels through the water below. They carry long saws, the kind usually used for cutting timber. The process is slow and incredibly manual. You can hear the rhythmic rasping of the metal teeth biting into the ice. Rasp, rasp. It is a dry, harsh sound. They are cutting the ice into irregular blocks. It is not neat. It is not precise. It is a struggle. The ice fights back. It is heavy and slippery. You watch a man try to lift a block with a pair of iron tongs. It slides out and crashes back down, sending a spray of ice chips into the air. He curses softly, his breath misting in front of his face. Frederic is there on the ice with them, directing the operation. He is obsessive about the quality. He wants only the clearest, hardest ice. He tells them to avoid the snow ice, the white, bubbly layer on top that is full of air, that melts too fast. He wants the black ice. Underneath, the stuff that is so dense and clear it looks dark, because you are seeing the water below it. You watch him kneel down and inspect a block, running his gloved hand over the smooth, cold surface. He looks like a jeweler inspecting a diamond, except this diamond weighs 300 pounds and will turn into a puddle if he is not careful. The days turn into weeks. The pile of ice on the shore grows. It is a strange sight, a mountain of transparent blocks sitting in the snow. You can see the winter sun glinting off the edges, creating little rainbows in the fractured light. Now they have to move it. You watch the wagons arrive. They are heavy, wooden carts pulled by oxen and horses. The animals snort and stamp in the cold, their breath steaming. The men load the ice onto the wagons. It is back-breaking work. Every block has to be lifted, positioned, and secured. You climb up onto the seat of one of the wagons. The wood is rough and cold beneath you. The driver snaps the reins, and the cart lurches forward. You begin the slow journey from the pond to the harbor. The wheels creak and groan under the weight. The road is rutted and frozen hard. Every bump sends a jolt through the wagon, and you can hear the ice blocks shifting and clunking against each other. It is a precarious cargo. If the wagon tips, the ice will slide out and shatter. You watch the driver navigate the turns with extreme caution. He is moving slower than a walking pace. It is tedious. It is boring. It is exactly the kind of slow, methodical process that makes your eyelids feel heavy just watching it. When you finally reach the docks, the favorite is waiting. The loading process is even more chaotic than the harvesting. You stand on the deck of the ship and look down into the dark, empty hold. It smells of old cargo and damp wood. Frederic is shouting instructions. He wants the ice packed tight. He wants no gaps. You watch the men lower the blocks down using ropes and pulleys. The rope strains and creaks. Creak, thud. Block after block disappears into the belly of the ship. Then comes the sawdust. You watch as sacks of pine sawdust are emptied into the spaces between the ice and the hull. The air fills with the sweet, resinous scent of pine. It is a smell that reminds you of forests and summer, a sharp contrast to the freezing wind blowing off the harbor. The sawdust floats in the air, coating the men's coats and settling in their hair like brown snow. They pack it in, stamping it down with their boots. They are building a nest for the ice. You realize that this is the secret weapon. This humble waste product from the lumber mills is the only thing standing between Frederic's fortune and total ruin. As the hold fills up, the ship sinks lower in the water. You can see the waterline creeping up the side of the hull. The sailors watching from the dock look nervous. They are whispering to each other. They point at the way the ship sits in the water. They say she is too heavy. They say she is riding deep. Frederic ignores them. He is focused on the manifest. He is counting blocks. He is calculating tonnage. He is in a world of his own, a world where ice is more valuable than gold. Finally, the loading is done. The hatches are battened down. The favorite is sitting heavy and low, stuffed full of Massachusetts winter. It is an odd thought that beneath your feet, Separated by a few inches of wood and sawdust is a piece of a frozen pond that was sitting quietly in the woods just a few days ago. Now it is about to go on an adventure that most people in Boston will never experience. You walk along the deck one last time before the departure. The wood of the railing is smooth and cold under your hand. The rigging hums in the wind. The ship feels alive, restless. It is ready to go. Frederic is standing at the bow, looking out toward the open sea. He looks tired. His eyes are red-rimmed, and his coat is stained with sawdust and mud. But there is a look of triumph on his face. He has done the hard part. He has gotten the ice out of the water and into the ship. Now he just has to fight the sun. The sun is a formidable enemy. You look up at the gray sky. Even now in winter, the sun is there, waiting behind the clouds. And as this ship sails south, the sun will get stronger. It will beat down on the deck. It will heat up the water around the hull. It will try with all its might to turn that ice back into water. It is a silent battle, a battle between thermodynamics and a stubborn Yankee with a dream. You think about the people in Martinique, the first destination. They have no idea what is coming. They are sitting on their verandas, fanning themselves in the heat, drinking warm lime juice. They do not know that a ship is coming toward them carrying a miracle in its hold. They do not know that their world is about to change. You wonder if they will even believe it when they see it. Will they think it is glass? Will they think it is magic? The crew begins to untie the ropes. The heavy hemp lines splash into the water. The sails are unfurled, snapping loudly as they catch the wind. You feel the deck shift beneath your feet as the favorite pushes away from the dock. The gap between the ship and the land widens. You watch the city of Boston slowly recede. The brick buildings, the church steeples, the smoke from the chimneys. It all gets smaller and smaller. You are leaving the known world behind. You are sailing into the unknown, with a cargo that shouldn't exist, on a ship that shouldn't float, on a mission that makes no sense. As the ship reaches the harbor mouth and hits the open ocean, the rolling motion begins. Up and down, up and down. It is a slow, hypnotic rhythm. The waves are dark and gray, capped with white foam. The wind is cold, but you know that with every mile you sail south, it will get warmer. You find a spot near the mainmast and sit down. You wrap your coat tighter around you. You close your eyes and listen to the sounds of the ship, the creaking of the wood, the rush of the water along the hull, the snap of the canvas. You think about the ice down below. It is sitting there in the dark, silent and cold. It is sleeping. It is waiting. You wonder how much of it will survive. Will it be half? Will it be a quarter? Will it be nothing but a hold full of tepid water? Frederic doesn't know. No one knows. That is the beauty of it. It is a gamble. A massive frozen gamble. The afternoon light begins to fade. The gray sky turns a deep, bruised purple. Night is coming. The ocean is vast and empty. You are just a tiny speck of wood and canvas on a giant, watery planet. The cold air feels clean and sharp in your lungs. You take a deep breath, tasting the salt. You feel a strange sense of peace. There is no more rushing. The ice is loaded. The ship is sailing. There is nothing left to do but wait and watch the miles slip by. You drift into a state of quiet observation. You watch a sailor climbing the rigging, his silhouette dark against the darkening sky. You watch the wake of the ship, a white trail of foam stretching back toward the horizon. You watch the first stars beginning to appear, faint pinpricks of light in the vast canopy above. It is a slow, deliberate start to a long journey. A journey that will take you from the frozen heart of New England to the steaming jungles of the tropics. But for now, you are here, in the cold, on the water, moving slowly, steadily, relentlessly forward. You find yourself back at the edge of the water, but time has moved forward, and the scene before you has transformed from a chaotic struggle into something resembling a strange, frozen bollet. The days of men hacking aimlessly at the ice with jagged hand saws are gone, replaced by a system so precise, so mathematical, that it turns the organic chaos of a winter pond into a factory floor. You are standing on the shore of Fresh Pond, or perhaps Spy Pond, the locations where Frederic Tudor's operations have truly begun to scale. The air is just as cold as you remember, a sharp, dry chill that tightens the skin on your face. But the atmosphere here is different. It is purposeful. It is rhythmic. You look out at the ice and notice that it no longer looks like a natural body of water. It looks like a gigantic sheet of graph paper. A grid of perfect, straight lines has been etched across the entire surface, stretching for acres. The sun is low in the sky, casting long, pale blue shadows across this geometric landscape, and the lines catch the light, glowing like silver threads woven into the dark ice. This is the innovation that saved the industry. This is the work of Nathaniel Wyeth, a man who looked at a frozen lake and saw a problem of geometry. You watch a team of horses moving slowly across the ice in the distance. It is a sight that instinctively makes you hold your breath. A horse is a heavy, high-centered animal designed for galloping on turf, not walking on a frictionless surface. Yet here they are, plodding along with a calm, deliberate gait. You walk closer, stepping carefully onto the ice yourself, listening to the deep, resonant hum that the lake makes under weight. It is a sound like a tightening guitar string, a bass note that you feel in the soles of your boots more than you hear with your ears. As the horses draw near, you see the secret to their stability. You look down at their hooves. They are not wearing standard iron shoes. They are fitted with specialized cleats, sharp metal spikes that bite into the ice with every step. It gives them a strange, clicking walk, metal punching into frozen water, but it keeps them upright. You can see the steam rising from their nostrils in rhythmic bursts, a warm fog that dissipates instantly in the biting air. The drivers walk beside them, holding the reins loosely, their voices low and murmuring. There is no shouting here. Shouting feels wrong in this cathedral of cold. Behind the horse, dragged along by a heavy leather harness, is the tool that changed everything, the ice plow. It does not look like a plow you would use in a field of soil. It looks more like a sled with a series of jagged teeth along the bottom, arranged in a line from short to tall. You watch as the driver lines up the blade with a faint scratch mark on the ice. He clicks his tongue, and the horse leans into the harness. The plow begins to move. You listen to the sound it makes. It is not a scrape. It is a shearing sound, a continuous, high-pitched shah-ah as the steel teeth carve a groove into the ice. The first pass is shallow, maybe only 3 inches deep. The plow leaves behind a trail of white ice dust, like powdered sugar bordering a clean, dark line. This is the marker groove. But the brilliance of the design is what you see next. Attached to the side of the plow is a metal guide, a long arm that rides in the groove cut on the previous pass. This forces the plow to cut the new line exactly parallel to the first one, 22 inches away. There is something deeply satisfying about watching this process. It is compulsive organization on a massive scale. You watch them travel the length of the pond, turn the horse in a slow, wide arc, and come back, the guide locking into the new groove, ensuring the next strip is perfectly identical, up and down, back and forth. It is like watching a 3D printer working in slow motion, but instead of plastic, the medium is winter itself. Once the vertical lines are cut, they turn the whole operation 90 degrees and start cross-cutting. You stand there for a long time, hypnotized by the formation of the squares. The lake is being turned into a chessboard. Thousands upon thousands of 22-inch squares, etched into the surface but still connected below. This standardization is the key to the cargo hold. You remember the ship, the favorite, and how they struggled to pack the irregular lumps of ice. Gaps mean air, and air means melting. But these, you can already see how they will fit together. They are bricks. You are watching the creation of a crystal fortress. Historians still argue about exactly how much efficiency this plow added to the process. Some claim it reduced the cost of harvesting by 2/3. Others suggest it simply made the impossible possible. But standing here, watching the clean lines appear in the ice, the economics don't matter as much as the sheer aesthetic order of it. It brings a sense of calm to the chaotic natural world. The wild, unpredictable winter is being tamed by straight lines and right angles. Once the plow has done its work, cutting deep, but not all the way through, the next team arrives. These men are carrying long, heavy iron bars with chiseled tips. They are the breakers. You watch a man step up to the edge of the grid. He inserts the tip of his bar into one of the deep grooves. He gives a gentle, practiced twist. You expect a loud crack, but instead, there is a dull thump, and a massive sheet of ice, perhaps consisting of 40 or 50 squares, detaches from the main ice field. They call this a raft. You follow the raft as it is guided toward the shore. This is the most peaceful part of the harvest. The men use long wooden poles with iron hooks on the end to pull the ice rafts through a channel of open water. The channel has been cut specifically for this purpose, a dark highway of water leading from the center of the lake to the ice houses on the shore. You walk along the edge of the canal, matching your pace to the floating ice. It moves silently, gliding over the black water with barely a ripple. The contrast is striking. The ice raft is a brilliant, translucent white against the dark, churning water of the canal. Occasionally, a worker will step onto the floating raft, riding it like a slow-motion surfer, using his pole to push off the edges of the canal. It looks fun, in a dangerous, freezing sort of way. You imagine the balance required, standing on a floating slab of ice while wearing heavy woolens and boots. One slip, and you are in the water. And in this water, your muscles seize in minutes. You notice a small, quirky detail about the workers' gear. Many of them have tied ropes around their waists, trailing behind them, or attached to the shore. It looks like a leash. It is a simple, low-tech safety device. If they slip into the black water, the rope is their lifeline, allowing their colleagues to hold them out before the cold claims them. It is a grim reminder that despite the beautiful geometry, and the peaceful silence. This is a hostile environment. You are walking on the roof of a drowning world. As the raft reaches the shore, the pace quickens slightly. Here, the large rafts are broken down into individual blocks. You watch a worker with a trident, like tool, tap the groove between two squares. Tap, snap. The ice separates cleanly, leaving a perfect, cubic block bobbing in the water. It looks like a giant ice cube. The kind you might put in a glass, only this one weighs 300 pounds. Now comes the challenge of getting this heavy, slippery block out of the water and into the ice house. You look up at the shore. The ice house is a massive, windowless structure made of wood and brick. It looks like a barn that has been sealed shut against the world. Leading up to it is a wooden ramp, slick with water and slush. In the early days, they used oxen to hoist the blocks, but here you see the beginnings of mechanization. A steam engine chugs rhythmically nearby. Chug hiss, chug hiss. It is a soothing, mechanical heartbeat. A chain loop runs up the ramp, fitted with metal catches. You watch as a worker guides a block of ice to the base of the ramp. The chain catches the block, and it begins to ascend. You watch the block slide up the ramp, water streaming off its sides. It glides upward, defying gravity, carried by the relentless motion of the chain. It disappears into the dark maw of the icehouse door. You decide to follow it. You walk up a walkway beside the ramp, entering the vast, dim interior of the warehouse. Inside, the air is even colder than it is outside. It is a still, trapped cold. The space is cavernous, rising high into the rafters. You let your eyes adjust to the gloom. The only light comes from the open doorways and a few lanterns hanging from beams, casting a warm, orange glow that reflects off the millions of facets of the ice. You are standing in a cathedral of frozen water. The floor is covered in a thick layer of sawdust and hay. The smell is overwhelming. Dry grass, pine wood, and the clean, metallic scent of snow. You watch the men stacking the blocks. They are building a wall. But unlike a bricklayer who uses mortar, these men rely on the perfect shape of the blocks and the freezing temperature to fuse them together. They slide the blocks into place with a satisfying clunk. They leave a small gap between the ice and the walls of the warehouse. You watch them fill this gap with more sawdust. This is the insulation. It is the blanket. You realize that this entire massive building is essentially a giant thermos. The goal is not to make the ice colder. It is to stop the heat from getting in. They are banking the cold, storing it like grain in a silo. You notice the texture of the blocks as they are stacked. Some are crystal clear, the black ice Frederic prizes so highly. You can look deep inside them and see tiny air bubbles suspended in time, or perhaps a frozen leaf that got trapped in the fall. It is a snapshot of the season, preserved in a solid block. Other blocks are cloudy, white as milk, full of trapped air. The workers try to keep these separate, stacking them on the top layers, where they will melt first, sacrificing themselves to save the clear ice below. The sound inside the ice house is muffled. The sawdust absorbs the noise of boots and voices. There is a hushed quality to the work, as if everyone is aware of the fragility of their cargo. You lean against a wooden pillar, watching the wall of ice rise higher and higher. It is mesmerizing, row after row, layer after layer. A solid cliff of winter is rising towards the ceiling. You think about the journey these blocks have ahead of them. This quiet, Dark warehouse is just the waiting room. Soon, they will be moved again, loaded onto wagons, taken to the ships, and sent to places where the air is thick with humidity and the sun burns hot enough to blister skin. But for now, they are safe. They are huddled together in the dark, protected by wood and hay. You walk back out into the sunlight, squinting against the glare. The contrast is jarring. Outside, the world is bright and wide. The grid on the lake still stretches out before you, a testament to human stubbornness. The horses are still plodding along, cutting their lines. The steam engine is still chugging. It is a machine of extraction, pulling the cold out of the earth to be shipped away. You wander down to the edge of the little canal, the water highway leading from the harvesting area. You sit on a wooden crate, watching the blocks float by. It is meditative. 1 block, 2 blocks, 3 blocks. They bob slightly, knocking gently against the wooden sides of the channel with a soft, hollow thud. Thump bump. You find yourself counting them, like counting sheep. The sun begins to dip lower, turning the sky a bruised purple and orange. The shadows of the trees lengthen across the ice, stretching out like long, dark fingers. The workers begin to pack up their tools. The horses are unhitched from the plows, their heads drooping with fatigue. The steam engine gives a final hiss and falls silent. The harvest is done for the day. You stay there as the twilight settles in. The temperature drops even further. You can feel the frost forming on your collar. The lake grows quiet again. The grid lines are barely visible now in the fading light. The water in the canal begins to skim over with a fresh layer of thin, delicate ice, healing the wound the men have made. The pond is taking back its own. You think about the sheer scale of it. Thousands of tons of ice. Not gold, not spices, not silk, just frozen water. And yet, to the people who will receive it, it will be as precious as any jewel. It is a strange commodity, one that disappears as you use it, one that fights to destroy itself every second it exists. But here, in the twilight of a New England winter, it feels permanent. It feels solid. It feels like something you can build a world on. You listen to the settling sounds of the ice. As the temperature shifts, the lake groans. It is a deep, mournful sound, echoing from the center of the pond. Woom. It sounds like a whale song, or a heavy door closing in a distant room. It is the sound of the ice expanding, shifting, finding its comfortable position for the night. It is a lullaby of geology. You pull your coat tighter and stand up. Your legs feel stiff from the cold. You take a last look at the ice house, looming dark and silent against the sky. Inside, the winter is sleeping, stacked in neat rows, waiting for its voyage. You turn and walk away from the lake, the crunch of your boots on the snow, the only sound accompanying you. You are leaving the frozen grid behind, but the image of those perfect, crystalline squares stays with you. It is a vision of order in a chaotic world, a promise that even something as fleeting as a winter chill can be captured, boxed, and saved for a rainy or sunny day. You walk back towards the warmth of the town, leaving the lake to its secrets. The stars are coming out now, sharp and bright in the freezing air. They look like chips of ice themselves, scattered across the black velvet of space. You feel a heaviness in your limbs, a pleasant exhaustion from the cold air and the visual repetition of the harvest. The rhythmic movement of the saws, the slow plodding of the horses, the drifting of the ice rafts. It all blends together in your mind into a slow, looping film. You are ready to leave the ice behind for a moment and see what happens when this frozen cargo meets the sea. But that is the next leg of the journey. For now, you are content to leave the ice sleeping in its sawdust bed, safe and sound in the dark. You leave the crystalline geometry of the frozen pond behind and follow the heavy wagons as they trundle down the hard, packed dirt roads toward the harbor. The air here is different. At the lake, the cold was sharp and clean, smelling of snow and deep water. Here at the wharf, the air is thick with the sense of industry. You smell the brine of the ocean, the tar used to waterproof ropes, the coal smoke from distant chimneys, and above all, the overwhelming, resinous perfume of fresh, cut wood. You are standing before the open hatch of the ship, looking down into the dark, cavernous belly of the vessel. This is where the battle against the sun will be fought. It is not a battle of weapons, but a battle of architecture. To ship winter to the tropics, you cannot simply throw ice into a hole and hope for the best. You have to build a fortress against the heat. You have to construct a vessel within a vessel. You descend the narrow ladder into the hold. The light from above filters down in dusty shafts, illuminating the floating motes of grain and fiber that dance in the stillness. It is quieter down here, the sounds of the harbor muffled by the thick oak planks of the hull. You run your hand along the ship's ribs. The wood is cool and damp. This is the enemy. Wood conducts heat. The ocean outside is just a few inches away, and as the ship sails south, that ocean will turn into a warm bath. If the heat from the water travels through the wood and touches the ice, the game is over. This is where Frederic Tudor's obsession with insulation becomes the central character of the story. You see, in the early days, nobody knew how to stop ice from melting. It seemed inevitable. Early attempts were disasters. You might remember the stories of the first shipments where they used straw or hay. You can imagine the result. As the ice sweated, which it always does a little, the water soaked into the straw. Wet straw begins to rot. Rotting generates heat. It was a cruel irony. The very material meant to keep the ice cold ended up cooking it in a steaming compost pile of fermentation. But today, you are witnessing the solution. You look up toward the square of light at the hatch and see a chute being lowered. A moment later, a cascade of golden, brown powder pours down into the hold. It falls softly like a heavy, dry rain. It is sawdust. You watch it pile up on the floorboards. It is soft, light, and incredibly dry. To the lumber mills of New England, this is trash. It is the waste product that clogs their floors and fills the air with choking dust. They burn it just to get rid of it. But to the ice merchant, this is gold dust. You kneel down and pick up a handful. It feels airy and insubstantial. You let it sift through your fingers. It is not the wood itself that matters. It is the air trapped between the tiny particles. Physics tells us that still air is one of the best insulators in the natural world. By surrounding the ice with this fluffy, chaotic mass of wood particles, Tudor is essentially wrapping his cargo in a blanket of trapped air. The sawdust does two things. It halts the transfer of heat, and, unlike straw, it is thirsty. If the ice melts a little, the sawdust drinks the moisture and holds it, preventing the water from sloshing around and melting the neighboring blocks. It creates a dry, cool microclimate. You watch the stevedores, the dock workers, begin their work. They are not just loading cargo, they are artisans of stowage. They start by spreading a thick layer of sawdust across the bottom of the hold, at least a foot deep. They rake it smooth, creating a soft, level mattress for the ice to rest on. It looks inviting, like a bed made of crushed pine cones. Then the first block comes down. It is lowered in a sling, swinging gently in the dim light. You hear the rope creak as it takes the weight. The men guide it down, their movements slow and deliberate. Thump. It lands on the sawdust bed. It settles slightly, compressing the wood fibers. They unhook the sling and push the block into the corner. Now the real work begins. They lower the next block and push it up against the first, but they do not let them touch. You watch as a worker takes a shovel and sprinkles a thin layer of sawdust between the vertical faces of the ice. Every block must be isolated. Every block must be an island. They are building a three-dimensional jigsaw puzzle where the pieces are separated by thin veins of wood dust. The sound in the hold is rhythmic and hypnotic. You hear the swish of the shovels, the thud of the ice, and the heavy breathing of the men. It is hard work. The air is filled with fine dust that sticks to their sweat. They look like ghosts, coated in a fine layer of beige powder, but there is a calmness to it. The sawdust absorbs sound as well as heat. The shouting from the dock above sounds miles away. Down here, it is just the men and the growing wall of cold. You watch the structure rise. They build a second floor of ice on top of the first, but they do not stack them directly. Another layer of sawdust goes down. You realize the sheer volume of wood required for this operation. It is immense. Historians still argue whether the lumber industry saved the ice industry, or if the ice industry saved the lumber mills by giving value to their waste. It is likely a bit of both. A perfect, accidental symbiosis of New England's two greatest natural resources, frozen water and shredded trees. As the wall of ice grows higher, you notice something strange about the temperature in the hold. You would expect it to be freezing, but it is not. Standing near the center of the room, away from the ice wall, the air is cool but comfortable. The sawdust is doing its job. It is keeping the cold in the ice, preventing it from radiating out into the room. You can put your hand just an inch away from the sawdust, covered wall, and barely feel the chill. It is a ghostly sensation, knowing that a massive glacier is sitting right next to you, hidden behind a curtain of pine dust. You observe the sides of the ship. The workers leave a significant gap, almost 2 feet wide, between the stacked ice and the wooden hull of the ship. This is the dead space. They fill this gap entirely with sawdust. They pack it down with long wooden tampers. Thump, thump, thump. You watch the dust compress. This is the main defensive wall. When the tropical sun beats down on the black paint of the ship's exterior and the wood heats up, that heat will hit this 2-foot barrier of pine and stop dead. You wander to the back of the hold, into the shadows where the curve of the ship's hull creates awkward, narrow spaces. The men cannot fit square blocks here. In the old days, this space might have been wasted or left empty. But empty space is the enemy. Air currents carry heat, so you watch them shovel sawdust into every nook and cranny. They fill the spaces between the ribs of the ship. They pack it around the base of the masts that pass through the hold. They are obsessive. It reminds you of a bird building a nest, tucking material into every available crevice. to keep the wind out. The smell changes as you move closer to the ice. Underneath the pine scent, there is a faint, crisp smell of ozone and old water. It is the smell of the pond trapped in the blocks, waiting to be released in a glass in Calcutta. You think about the journey these molecules have taken. Evaporated from the ocean, fallen as snow on a Massachusetts hill, melted into a pond, frozen by the winter wind, cut by a horse-drawn plow, and now buried in the sawdust of a Maine pine tree. A worker pauses to wipe his brow. He takes a drink from a canteen. The water in his canteen is warm. He looks at the wall of ice, thousands of gallons of frozen water, and smiles a tired smile. It is a classic case of water everywhere, nor any drop to drink. Or at least not a cold drop. The ice is cargo, not refreshment. It is strictly forbidden to chip off a piece for personal use. Every ounce belongs to the ledger book. As the level of the ice rises toward the deck beams above, the work gets harder. The men are now working in a cramped space near the ceiling of the hold. They have to stoop. You watch them sliding the final blocks into place on their knees. The light is dim up here, blocked by the stack itself. They are working by the light of lanterns that cast long, flickering shadows against the wooden ceiling. The final step is the topping off. They cannot leave the top of the ice exposed. Heat rises, but heat also radiates down from the sun-baked deck. So they shovel a final, thick layer of sawdust over the top of the stack. It is a heavy blanket, maybe 2 feet thick. You watch them smooth it out. When they are finished, you cannot see the ice at all. The hold just looks like it is filled with a mountain of sawdust. The crystal treasure is completely buried. You think about the trust involved in this. The captain of the ship will spend the next 4 months sailing a cargo he cannot see. He will have to trust that the ice is still there, frozen solid beneath the dust. He will check the bilge pumps every day. If the pumps are dry, the ice is safe. If the pumps start pumping water, he knows his profit is melting away into the ocean. It is a silent anxiety that will follow him across the equator. You climb back up the ladder, your boots coated in dust. Emerging onto the deck, the brightness of the day surprises you. You look down one last time before they close the hatch. The hold looks peaceful. It looks like a grain silo or a barn loft. There is no sign of the winter hidden below. The crew begins to place the heavy wooden hatch covers over the opening. Clunk, clunk. One by one, the squares of light are extinguished. Then comes the tarpaulin, a heavy canvas sheet treated with tar to make it waterproof. They stretch it over the hatch and nail it down. Then comes another layer of planks. They are sealing it up as if it were a tomb. You walk to the rail and look out at the harbor. Other ships are being loaded with cotton, with barrels of flour, with salted fish. Those cargoes are durable. They can sit in a warehouse for years. But your cargo is dying. From the moment it was cut from the pond, it has been dying. The sawdust is just life support. It is slowing the death, stretching it out over months. It is a race against time. And the race has already started. You notice a few stray wood shavings drifting on the breeze, landing on the dark water of the harbor. They float there, light and buoyant. It is a small reminder of the thousands of pounds of the stuff now sitting in the belly of your ship. You wonder who figured this out. Was it a happy accident? Did someone leave a block of ice in a pile of sawdust in a barn and find it unmelted a week later? Historians suggest that Tudor experimented with everything: rice chaff, wheat straw, blankets, even peat moss. He was a man who learned by failure. He lost thousands of dollars turning ships into swimming pools before he found the right formula. The sawdust method wasn't just a technique, it was a trade secret. For years, he tried to keep it quiet, but in the tight, knit world of maritime trade, secrets leaked like melting ice. Eventually, everyone knew. If you want to ship winter, you need the dust of the forest. The ship sits lower in the water now. You can feel the heaviness of it. The favorite is fully laden. She feels solid, anchored by the dense weight of the ice. The buoyancy of the wood and sawdust fights against the density of the frozen water. It creates a unique motion. The ship doesn't roll sharply. It has a slow, sluggish pendulum swing. You will have to get used to this rhythm. It is the rhythm of a heavy sleeper. You find a spot on a coil of rope near the stern. The preparations are nearly complete. The sun is beginning to set, casting a golden light over the masts and spars of the harbor. The sawdust dust that was floating in the air has settled. The shouting has died down. There is a sense of anticipation. The cargo is stowed. The insulation is packed. The hatch is sealed. You think about the microscopic battle happening in the dark hold beneath you. The air molecules in the sawdust are standing guard. The heat is knocking at the door, trying to get in through the wood, through the tar, through the gaps. But the sawdust holds the line. It is a passive defense, a silent fortress of friction and air pockets. The anchor chain rattles as it is prepared for lifting. You feel the vibration through the deck. The voyage is about to begin. You are leaving the safety of the cold north. You are heading into the fire. You are taking a snowball to hell. And you are betting your fortune that it won't melt. You close your eyes and listen to the sounds of the ship coming to life. The wind snaps the canvas. The wood groans. And somewhere deep below, buried under feet of pine dust, the ice waits in the dark, silent and cold, dreaming of the pond it left behind. You are now adrift in a world of endless blue. The familiar, gray coastlines of New England have long since dissolved into the horizon, replaced by the 360-degree expanse of the Atlantic Ocean. You stand at the railing of the favorite, watching the water shear away from the wooden hull. It is a mesmerizing, glassy blue, deep and indifferent. The ship moves with a slow, deliberate heaviness. You can feel the weight of the cargo in every roll. A ship filled with cotton bobs and dances, a ship filled with stone or iron plunges, but a ship filled with ice. It has a strange, lethargic momentum, as if the frozen cargo itself is slowing down time. You have been at sea for weeks. The days have blurred into a continuous loop of sunrises and sunsets, punctuated only by the changing of the watch. But the most significant change has been the temperature. You have shed your heavy wool coat, then your waistcoat. Now, even your linen shirt feels heavy. The air is no longer crisp and biting. It is thick, humid, and pressing against your skin like a warm towel. You are approaching the equator. This is the danger zone. You look up at the sun. In Boston, the sun was a distant, pale coin in the sky. Here, it is a physical weight. It hammers down on the deck, turning the tar in the seams into sticky black goo that clings to your boots. You can see heat waves shimmering off the wooden planks. You touch the railing, and it is hot enough to make you pull your hand away. The entire ship is baking. It is a floating oven. And inside this oven, wrapped in its sawdust blanket, is the ice. You find yourself constantly thinking about the hold. It is an obsession that grips everyone on board, from the captain to the cabin boy. You watch the captain during his morning inspection. He walks to the pumps located near the mainmast. These pumps reach down into the bilge, the very bottom of the ship where any leaked water would collect. If the ice is melting, the water has to go somewhere. It will trickle down through the sawdust, through the floorboards, and pool in the bilge. You listen as he works the handle. Clank, whoosh, clank, whoosh. It is a tense moment. The crew pauses their work, ears straining. If a clear stream of water gushes out, it means disaster. It means the insulation has failed, and the profits are being pumped into the sea. But today, the pump coughs, spits a small trickle of dark, smelly bilge water, and then sucks air. Gurgle, hiss. A dry pump. You see the captain's shoulders relax. The fortress is holding. The sawdust is winning. You wander to the hatch cover. It is hot to the touch. You can fry an egg on the wood here. It seems impossible that just 10 feet below your boots, the temperature is below freezing. It defies your intuition. You imagine the ice blocks down there, huddled together in the dark, sweating perhaps a single drop at a time, which is instantly drunk by the thirsty pine dust. The silence from below is the best news you could hope for. The ship sails on, crossing the invisible line of the equator. The wind here can be fickle. You enter the doldrums, that infamous band of calm near the center of the world. The sails hang limp and useless, flapping lazily with the roll of the ship. Flap, creak. The silence is profound. The ocean becomes a mirror, reflecting the brutal sun back up at you. This is the nightmare scenario for an ice ship. Speed is life. Every day spent sitting still is another day of heat soaking into the hull. You watch the crew wetting down the decks. They draw buckets of seawater and splash them over the planks. Splash. Swish. They are trying to cool the wood, to lower the temperature of the deck by even a few degrees. Evaporative cooling. It is a primitive air conditioning system for the ship's skin. You see steam rising faintly from the wet wood. It feels like a losing battle. But they do it anyway. It gives them something to do other than stare at the horizon and worry about the melting cargo. Nights in the tropics are a relief, but they are strange. The air does not cool down much. It just loses the sting of the sun. You sit on the deck, looking up at the stars. The constellations are different here. The North Star has dipped below the horizon behind you, and the Southern Cross is rising ahead. You are sailing downhill on the globe now. The ocean glows with phosphorescence. You watch the wake of the ship leaving a trail of green fire in the water. It is beautiful, but it feels warm. Even the light looks warm. You think about the irony of your situation. You are floating on a ship, carrying hundreds of tons of ice. Yet you are drinking warm water from a cask that tastes of wood and algae. You are sweating through your clothes, dreaming of a single chip of that ice. But the hold is sealed. It is a vault. You are Tantalus, floating on a treasure you cannot touch. To open the hatch now would be to let the heat in. It would be suicide for the cargo. So you suffer the heat, knowing that relief is just a few planks away. The voyage continues south, tracing the coast of Africa, but staying far out to sea to catch the trade winds. You round the Cape of Good Hope. The weather changes again. The air grows cooler, sharper. You are dipping back into the temperate zone of the southern hemisphere. The crew breathes a sigh of relief. The ship leans into the wind, picking up speed. The spray flying off the bow is cold again. The pumps remain mostly dry. The ice has survived the first trial by fire. But the journey is not over. You turn north again, heading into the Indian Ocean. You have to cross the equator a second time. It is a double jeopardy. The heat returns, fiercer than before. The Indian Ocean feels heavy, oily, and incredibly hot. The air is thick with moisture. You feel like you are breathing soup. This leg of the journey is long and lonely. You go weeks without seeing another sail. You are alone with the creaking ship and the endless blue. You find yourself falling into a trance-like state. The repetition of the waves, the steady hum of the wind in the rigging, the daily ritual of the dry pumps, it becomes a life of pure maintenance. You are maintaining the ship, maintaining the course, maintaining the belief that the ice is still there. You observe the hull of the ship from the rail. You notice something peculiar. On a normal ship, barnacles and seaweed grow thick on the hull in these warm waters. But on the Favorite, the growth is slower or different. The hull is cold. The cold from the ice, despite the insulation, does leach out slightly into the wood. It confuses the marine life. You are sailing a refrigerator through a tropical aquarium. Sometimes, deep in the quiet of the night, you think you can hear the ice shifting. A dull thump from deep below. Is it the cargo settling as the sawdust compresses? Is it a block melting and collapsing? Or is it just the ship groaning in the swells? You lie in your hammock listening. Creak, groan, thump. It is the heartbeat of the vessel. You realize that the cargo is alive in its own way. It changes. It reacts. It is slowly, agonizingly transforming. Historians debate how much ice was actually lost on these early voyages. Tudor expected to lose half. If he arrived with 50% of his cargo, he was profitable. If he arrived with 60%, he was rich. If he arrived with less than 30%, he was bankrupt. It was a high-stakes game of percentages, played out over 4 months of slow sailing. One afternoon, a storm rolls in. The sky turns a bruised purple, and the wind picks up, howling through the rigging. The sea turns violent. Whitecaps tear off the tops of the waves. The ship pitches and rolls wildly. You hold onto the rail, your knuckles white. This is a different kind of danger. The ice is heavy. If it shifts, if the blocks slide to one side, the ship will list. It could capsize. You imagine the scene in the hold. The blocks straining against the sawdust packing. The friction of the wood chips, fighting the momentum of the ice. You pray the stevedores packed it tight. You pray the sawdust has settled into a solid mass. The ship lurches. You feel the floor drop away beneath you, then slam back up. Crash. Wave breaks over the bow, sending a torrent of water washing down the deck. But the ship rights itself. It feels heavy, sluggish, but stable. The ice holds. The sawdust acts like a shock absorber, cushioning the blocks, damping the movement. The storm rages for hours, then blows itself out, leaving behind a choppy, confused sea. You check the pumps again. A little water this time. The violent motion has squeezed some moisture out of the system. But nothing catastrophic. The fortress has held against the assault. As you approach the coast of India, the water changes color. It shifts from the deep, clear blue of the open ocean to a murky, silty green. You are nearing the outflow of the great rivers. The air smells different too. It smells of land. Not the pine and rock smell of New England, but a complex, heavy scent of spices, smoke, wet earth, and rotting vegetation. It is the smell of the subcontinent. Birds appear. First, just a few lonely gulls, then flocks of them. You watch them wheeling overhead, screeching. They are the welcoming committee. You see a piece of driftwood floating by, then a coconut. You are close. The excitement on the ship is palpable. The crew is shaving, washing their shirts, getting ready for land. They have been at sea for 130 days. You spot the pilot boat approaching. It is a small, nimble craft with a triangular sail. A local pilot climbs aboard to guide you up the treacherous Hooghly River towards Calcutta. He looks at the ship with curiosity. He has heard rumors of the ice ships, but it still seems like a myth. He asks the captain what he is carrying. The captain just smiles and points to the deck. "Winter," he says. The pilot laughs, thinking it is a joke. He doesn't know that beneath his bare feet, tons of Massachusetts pond water are waiting to be unleashed. The river journey is slow. The current is strong, and the mud banks are shifting. You watch the banks of the river slide by. You see temples, palm trees, small villages with thatched roofs. People stop their work to watch the big American ship go by. You wonder if they can feel the cold emanating from it. Probably not. To them, it is just another merchant vessel bringing clocks or saddles or wine. The heat here is ferocious. It is a wet, suffocating heat that wraps around you like a heavy blanket. You check the thermometer. It is over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. And yet, the pumps are still mostly dry. The sawdust, that humble, overlooked dust, has performed a miracle. It has carried a piece of the Arctic through the furnace of the tropics. Finally, the spires and domes of Calcutta appear in the distance. The city rises out of the haze, a sprawling metropolis of white colonial buildings and teeming streets. You have arrived. You have sailed 16,000 miles. You have crossed 2 oceans. You have defied the sun. The anchor drops with a heavy splash. Clatter splash. The chain runs out, rattling through the hawsepip. The ship swings around and settles into the current. You stand on the deck, looking at the busy waterfront. You are about to do the impossible. You are about to open the hatch and show the people of India that water can turn into stone. You feel a sense of quiet triumph. It is not loud or boastful. It is the deep satisfaction of a long, slow job well done. The ice is here. It has slept through the storms and the calms, through the cold nights and the boiling days. It is ready to wake up. You look at the hatch covers, still sealed tight with tar and nails. You wonder what the ice looks like now. Has it fused together into one giant block? Has it shrunk away from the walls? Is it crystal clear or cloudy? You will find out soon enough. The voyage is over. The trade is about to begin. You lean against the rail, wiping sweat from your forehead. You can almost taste the cold drink you are going to have. It is a phantom sensation, a memory of winter in the middle of a summer that never ends. You take a deep breath of the spicy, smoky air and smile. The favorite has lived up to her name. She has brought the favorite luxury of the north to the kings of the south. The Hooghly River at Calcutta is a chaotic, muddy artery of life. You stand on the deck of the favorite as the local dockworkers maneuver a barge alongside your hull. The air is thick, smelling of river mud, incense, and the sweat of 1,000 laborers. The contrast between this world and the frozen pond in Massachusetts could not be more extreme. There everything was white, silent, and still. Here everything is brown, loud, and in constant, frantic motion. You watch the crew pry up the planks of the hatch. The sound of the nails shrieking as they are pulled free cuts through the humid air. Screech, pop. The tarpaulin is peeled back, revealing the inner hatch covers. The moment of truth has arrived. Frederic Tudor's agent in Calcutta, a man named Mr. Osgood, is standing on the dock, looking anxious. He has pre-sold this cargo. He has promised the British colonial elite that winter has arrived. If the hold is empty or full of water, he is ruined. The final cover is lifted. You lean over the coaming, expecting a blast of cold air. Instead, you see nothing. Just a mountain of brown sawdust. It looks exactly the same as it did when you left Boston 4 months ago. The crew lowers a man down with a shovel. He begins to dig. Swish! Toss! Swish! Toss! He is digging for treasure in a pile of wood waste. You watch the shovel blade hit something hard. Thump! The sound is solid. It is not the hollow thud of wood on wood. The man brushes away the remaining dust. And there it is. A glint of something wet and shiny. A block of ice. It is smaller than it was when it went in. Rounded at the corners, smooth like a river stone. But it is there. It has survived. A cheer goes up from the crew, but it is a tired, relieved cheer. They rig the block and tackle. The first block is hoisted up out of the hold. It swings into the sunlight, dripping water. As it rises above the deck, it catches the light. It is a stunning object. In a world of mud and wood and cloth, this geometric crystal looks alien. It looks like a giant diamond. The water streaming off it evaporates almost instantly in the heat, creating a faint mist around the swinging block. You watch the reaction of the local stevedores. They stop their work. They stare. Many of them have never seen ice before. To them, water is a liquid. It is something you drink, or wash in, or sail on. The idea that it can be solid, that it can be hard enough to crush a toe, is terrifying and magical. One man reaches out tentatively to touch the block as it is lowered onto the barge. He pulls his hand back instantly with a yelp. "It burns!" he shouts in Bengali. The sensation of extreme cold is so foreign to his nerves that his brain interprets it as heat. The unloading process is a race. You can see the ice melting before your eyes. The sharp edges are rounding off. Rivulets of water are running down the sides of the blocks. You are losing product every second. The blocks are slid down a wooden chute onto the waiting barges. Slide. Splash. They are covered immediately with heavy woolen blankets and straw mats. You jump down onto the barge to follow the cargo. The barge pushes off, heading toward the shore. The destination is the ice house. Just like in Boston, Tudor has insisted on building a proper storage facility here. You approach the strange, round building on the banks of the river. It looks like a tomb or a temple. It is built with thick stone walls and a double roof to trap cool air. The transfer from barge to ice house is frantic. Coolies, the local laborers, carry the blocks on their heads or backs, wrapped in sacking. You watch them trot up the gangplank, their bare feet gripping the wood. They are carrying 100-pound blocks of frozen water in 100-degree heat. Water streams down their backs, soaking their clothes. It must be a shock to their systems, carrying a block of winter against their spine, while the sun beats down on their faces. Inside the Calcutta ice house, the scene is surreal. You step out of the blinding Indian sun into the cool, dark interior. It is like stepping into a cave. The air is chilly. The floor is covered in fresh straw. The blocks are stacked again, just like in the ship, but this time they are being sold as fast as they are stacked. A crowd has gathered outside. British officers in red coats, wealthy merchants in silk, curious locals. They are all clamoring for a piece of the miracle. You watch the transactions. The ice is sold by the pound. It is weighed on a large brass scale. The merchant places a dripping block on one side and brass weights on the other. The scale tips. Clank. Money changes hands. Silver rupees for frozen water. It is the most ephemeral purchase imaginable. You are buying something that is actively disappearing while you hold it. You see a servant from a wealthy household rushing away with a block of ice wrapped in a flannel blanket. He is running. He has to get it home before it melts. It is a literal race against time. You imagine him navigating the crowded streets of Calcutta, dodging bullock carts and rickshaws, clutching his melting treasure. Back at the ice house, you notice something interesting about the remaining ice blocks. They are not just clear, they are incredibly tough. The long voyage, the constant compression, and the slow annealing process of the temperature changes have made the ice dense. It is harder than fresh ice. It rings like a bell when struck with an iron hook. Historians note that the first shipment to Calcutta was a sensation not just because of the ice, but because of the apples. Tudor had packed barrels of Baldwin apples in the ice to keep them fresh. When the barrels were opened, the apples were crisp and red, as if they had just been picked from a tree in New England. In a tropical climate where fruit rots in a day, a crisp, cold apple was a miracle. You watch a British colonel bite into one. Crunch. The sound is loud in the quiet ice house. A look of pure nostalgia washes over his face. He is tasting home. The arrival of the ice changes the rhythm of the city. You walk through the European Quarter that evening. The mood is different. Usually, the heat makes everyone lethargic and irritable. But tonight, there is a buzz. You pass the open windows of a club. You hear the clinking of glass. Not the dull thud of heavy pottery, but the high, bright ring of crystal on crystal. Ice against glass. You enter a tavern near the waterfront. It is crowded. The bartender is the busiest man in Calcutta. He has a block of ice sitting in a sawdust-filled box behind the bar. He chips off pieces with a pick. Chip, chip. He drops the shards into glasses of brandy and water. You watch the patrons. They hold the cold glasses against their foreheads, against their cheeks. They close their eyes and sigh. It is a sensory overload. The cold shock is better than the alcohol itself. But it is not just for drinking. You hear stories of doctors rushing to the ice house. Ice is a medical revolution. You visit a local hospital the next day. The wards are stiflingly hot. You see a patient delirious with fever. In the past, there was little they could do but wipe his brow with warm water. Now, a nurse is applying an ice pack to his head. You watch the patient's breathing slow. The fever breaks. The ice is saving lives. It is numbing pain during surgeries. It is preserving medicines. The frozen water trade is suddenly a humanitarian mission. The logistics of distribution in Calcutta are fascinatingly complex. You watch the ice wallers, the delivery men. They have developed specialized carts lined with felt and tin. They trot through the streets at dawn, delivering daily rations of ice to the subscribers. It is the birth of the subscription model. You pay a monthly fee. and every morning, a block of ice appears at your door. It is the Netflix of the 19th century, but instead of streaming movies, they are streaming cold. However, not everyone is happy. You overhear a conversation between two local priests. They are suspicious of the ice. They wonder if it is natural. How can water be solid in the heat? Is it witchcraft? Is it chemicals? Some locals refuse to touch it, fearing it will freeze their insides or cause spirits to enter their bodies. Tudor's agents have to run public demonstrations, melting the ice in clear glass bowls to prove it leaves behind nothing but pure, sweet water. See, they say, it is just water. American water. The strangest part of the whole operation is the economics. The ice itself costs nothing to produce. It is free from the pond. The cost is all in the transport. The sawdust, the ship, the wages. But because the ships would otherwise be sailing to India empty, or with low-value ballast, to pick up cotton and spices, the freight cost is surprisingly low. Tudor has hacked the global shipping network. He has turned a waste leg of the journey into a profit center. You spend your days watching the ice house empty out. It takes weeks to sell the entire cargo. The insulation of the stone building works well, but it is not perfect. Every day, the blocks get a little smaller. The water drains away into the river. It is a visual countdown. When the last block is sold, the city will return to the heat. They will have to wait months for the next ship. The anticipation creates demand. People hoard it. They wrap it in newspapers, bury it in the ground. Try anything to make it last one more day. You notice the social hierarchy of ice. The biggest, clearest blocks go to the governor's mansion. The smaller, cloudier pieces go to the taverns. The chips and shavings are sold to the street vendors who make sherbets, shaved ice flavored with syrup. You watch a street urchin licking a cone of pink ice. He has never seen snow, never felt a winter wind. Yet here he is, eating a piece of a Massachusetts pond. The world has suddenly become a much smaller place. One afternoon, you take a small boat out onto the river to get a view of the ice house from the water. It stands there, a squat, round sentinel. It is a monument to the absurd idea that you can fight the climate. You think about Frederic Tudor back in Boston. He is probably already planning the next shipment, maybe 2 ships this time or 3. He has proved the doubters wrong. He hasn't just sold ice. He has created an addiction. Once you have had a cold drink in the tropics, you can never go back to warm water. He has changed the definition of comfort for half the globe. As the sun sets, turning the muddy river into a ribbon of gold, you see the favorite riding high in the water. Her hold is empty. The sawdust has been swept away or sold as bedding for horses. She is being loaded with silk, indigo, and saltpeter for the return voyage. The cycle continues. Winter comes to India, and India goes to Boston. You drift in the boat, listening to the sounds of the river. The temple bells ringing, the call to prayer, the shouts of the boatmen. And underneath it all, if you listen very closely, you can almost hear the faint, ghostly echo of sleigh bells and skate blades on a frozen pond, thousands of miles away. The ice has melted, but the memory of the cold lingers in the air, a refreshing ghost haunting the humid streets of Calcutta. You are now seated on the wide, shaded veranda of a British colonial bungalow in Calcutta. The chaotic energy of the docks feels miles away, replaced by the heavy, languid silence of the afternoon heat. It is Tiffin. Time, the midday break, and the world seems to have paused to catch its breath. The air is still, hanging heavy with the scent of jasmine and dust. You can hear the rhythmic swish, swish of the punkah, a large, cloth-ceiling fan pulled back and forth by a servant pulling a rope in the hallway. It stirs the warm air just enough to make it bearable, but it does not cool it. In front of you sits a low table set for afternoon refreshment. There is a silver tray, delicate porcelain cups, and a crystal decanter of water. But the centerpiece, the object that draws your eye, and the eye of everyone in the room, is the butter dish. You lean in to examine it. It is a specialized piece of serving ware, a butter cooler. It has a double, walled construction, and inside the outer chamber, resting on a bed of condensation, are shards of clear, glistening ice. You watch a single bead of water roll down the side of the jagged crystal. In the center, the butter is firm, yellow, and sculpted into a perfect curl. This might seem trivial to you, firm butter, but in Calcutta, before the arrival of the ice ships, butter was oil. It was a rancid, yellow liquid that you poured onto your bread. To see it standing solid, defying the 90-degree heat of the room, is a spectacle of physics. You pick up a silver knife and slice a piece. It holds its shape. You spread it on a piece of toast. It melts on the bread, not on the knife. It is a small, domestic luxury that feels like a magic trick. You look around the room at the other guests. They are dressed in light linens and muslins, fanning themselves lazily, but their eyes light up when the drinks are served. A servant enters carrying a tray of tall glasses. You hear the sound before you see it. The musical clink, clink of ice hitting glass. It is a sound that cuts through the heat like a knife. You take a glass. It is filled with brandy pawnee, brandy and water. But today it is different. Floating in the amber liquid is a rough, hewn chunk of Massachusetts pond water. You hold the glass in your hand. The condensation forms instantly, misting the glass with a cold sweat. You run your thumb through the droplets. The glass is shockingly cold against your palm. It sends a shiver up your arm, a physical jolt that wakes you from the heat-induced stupor. You take a sip. The liquid hits your tongue, cold and sharp. It is a revelation. Your body, which has been fighting the heat for months, suddenly relaxes. The cold radiates from your stomach, cooling you from the inside out. You watch the other guests. Their expressions are identical. A moment of closed-eyed bliss as the cold drink washes away the oppression of the climate. The conversation, which had been flagging, suddenly picks up. The ice has reanimated the party. You notice a young woman pressing her glass against her neck. She closes her eyes and sighs. It is not just a drink, it is a thermal rescue. You realize that ice has become the ultimate status symbol. To serve ice is to show that you have mastered the environment. You have purchased a piece of the Arctic and brought it into your living room. But the ice is not just for the British elite. You look out past the veranda railing into the garden. A group of servants is clustered around the back entrance of the house. They are sharing the melt, the water that has drained off the ice block in the kitchen. It is still cold. They cup it in their hands and splash it on their faces. You see them laughing, the shock of the cold making them gasp. For a moment, the rigid social hierarchy of the colony is bridged by the universal delight of cooling down. You wander into the house, toward the dining room. The table is set for dinner. In the center stands a magnificent ace pail or wine cooler. It is a silver bucket filled with crushed ice, cradling a bottle of Madeira wine. In the past, they would have cooled the wine by wrapping the bottle in wet cloth and hanging it in a drafty window, hoping for a few degrees of evaporation. Now they simply bury it in ice. The bottle is frosted white. You can imagine the first sip, crisp, clean, and refreshing. You think about the journey of that ice, from a silent, snowy forest to this polished mahogany table. It has traveled further than anyone in this room. It has seen more of the world, and now its journey ends here, melting slowly into a silver bucket, sacrificing itself to improve a bottle of wine. There is a frantic energy in the kitchen, which you can observe from the doorway. The cook is making ice cream. This is the crowning glory of the ice trade. Before Tudor, ice cream was a legend, something you read about in books from Europe. Now, it is on the menu. You watch the cook turning the handle of a sorbetiere, a pot within a pot device. The outer pot is filled with a mixture of crushed ice and salt. The salt lowers the freezing point, driving the cold into the inner pot where the cream and sugar are waiting. The cook is sweating. It is hard work. Grind. But he is smiling. He knows the reaction he will get when he brings out the dessert. You watch him open the lid to check the consistency. He scrapes the frozen cream from the sides. It is thickening. It is turning into a solid. He scoops a little out on a spoon and tastes it. He nods. It is ready. Later you watch the dessert being served. A molded shape of vanilla ice cream, perhaps flavored with a vanilla bean that also traveled halfway around the world. The guests stare at it. It sits on the plate, a cold, white island. They eat it slowly, savoring every spoonful. The sensation of eating something frozen in the tropics is confusing to the senses. It hurts the teeth but soothes the throat. It is a culinary paradox. As the evening wears on, the air cools slightly, but the humidity remains. You step back out onto the veranda. The ice in your glass has melted, leaving behind only a faint memory of cold water. You feel a strange sense of melancholy. The luxury is fleeting. The ice is finite. Every second it exists, it is disappearing. It reminds you of the fragility of all things. You listen to the sounds of the night, the chirping of cicadas, the distant barking of a dog. The ice has changed the soundscape too. You hear the chip, chip, chip of the bartender inside, breaking up a new block for the late night drinkers. It is a new rhythm of the night, a percussive reminder that the supply chain of cold is still flowing. You think about the ice house down by the river. It is closed now for the night, its thick doors barred. But inside, the great stack of blocks is still there, breathing its cold breath into the dark. It is a sleeping giant. You wonder how long it will last. A month, 2 months. The anxiety of the supply is always there. What if the next ship sinks? What if the winds are bad and the voyage takes too long? The city is now hooked on a resource it cannot produce. This dependency has created a new economy. You have heard rumors of ice thieves, men who try to steal blocks from the delivery carts. You have seen the ice preservers, heavy wooden chests lined with lead and felt, being sold in the markets. Everyone is trying to capture the cold, to hold on to it for just a little longer. You sit back in the rattan chair, feeling the weave of the cane against your back. The house is settling down. The servants are extinguishing the lamps. The darkness is warm and velvety. but you still feel cool. The ice has done its work. It has lowered your core temperature, calmed your pulse, and given you a moment of respite from the relentless Indian summer. You close your eyes and let your mind drift back to the source. You imagine the pond in Massachusetts again. But this time, you see it in summer. The water is blue and rippling. The trees are green. The ice is gone, melted back into the water cycle. It is a comforting thought. The ice you drank tonight will eventually evaporate, rise into the clouds, and perhaps fall again as snow on that same pond next winter. It is a global cycle of water, driven by the sun and the wind, and steered by a stubborn man with a ship full of sawdust. You feel a heavy drowsiness setting in. The combination of the heat, the brandy, and the relaxation of the cold drink is a powerful sedative. Your eyelids feel heavy. The sounds of the night blur together into a gentle hum. You are ready for sleep. And for the first time in months, you are not dreading the sweaty, tossing, and turning ordeal of a tropical night. You have been cooled from within. You drift deeper into relaxation. You think about the sheer strangeness of it all. That a piece of a New England winter can end up in a glass in India. It connects the world in a way that maps and politics never could. It is a connection of sensation. The cold on your tongue is the same cold that a boy in Boston feels when he catches a snowflake on his tongue. For a moment, the distance vanishes. You are almost asleep now. The image of the white ice block floating in the dark hold of the ship plays in your mind. It is a peaceful image. A white monolith in the darkness. Silent, cold, enduring. You let that coolness wash over you, carrying you down into a deep, dreamless sleep. You are standing in front of a large, hand-painted map pinned to the wall of a counting house in Boston. It is a few decades later now. The year is perhaps 1850. The map is covered in thin web, lines of black ink, tracing the routes of ships across the oceans. You step closer to examine the spiderweb of commerce. It all radiates outward from this one, cold corner of New England. The lines stretch south to Havana, Charleston, and New Orleans. They cross the Atlantic to London. They loop around Africa to Bombay, Madras, and Calcutta. They push even further, reaching the humid ports of Singapore, Manila, and Hong Kong. You realize that you are looking at an empire. But it is not an empire of land or gold. It is an empire of temperature. Frederic Tudor, the stubborn man who once stood in the snow, being laughed at by his neighbors, is now known globally as the Ice King. You look at the ledger open on the desk beside the map. The numbers are staggering. Hundreds of ships, hundreds of thousands of tons of ice. The debts that once threatened to crush him are gone, replaced by a fortune built on frozen water. You decide to follow these lines on the map, letting your mind drift to the furthest reaches of this cold network. You imagine yourself standing on the docks of Rio de Janeiro. The air here is thick and sweet, smelling of coffee and sugar. You watch a ship unloading its cargo. The workers here are not unloading tools or machinery. They are unloading Boston ice. It has become a brand name. It doesn't matter if it came from Fresh Pond or Spy Pond. If it is cold and clear, it is Boston. You watch the ice being carted up the steep, winding streets of Rio. It is destined for the cafes where wealthy patrons drink iced coffee. It is a strange cultural exchange. The beans go north to wake up the Americans, and the frozen ponds go south to cool down the Brazilians. You see the ice melting into the dark, bitter liquid, swirling together in a glass. It is a perfect thermodynamic marriage. Your mind travels further east to Singapore. Here, the ice trade has become a fixture of colonial life. You stand by the Singapore River, watching the ice ships anchor. The arrival of the ice is a major event. Flags are raised. News spreads through the town. "The ice is here!" It is a moment of collective relief. You visit the Whampoa Ice House, a structure that has become a landmark. It is a strange building in a tropical landscape, a temple to a foreign god of winter. You hear a story from a local merchant about the early days. He tells you that when the first ice arrived, the locals didn't know how to transport it. They carried it in their bare hands or wrapped it in banana leaves. It slipped and slid and melted. Now they have perfected the art. They use sawdust, rice chaff felt. They have learned the language of insulation. You drift north to Hong Kong. The colony is booming, and the demand for ice is insatiable. You watch the British expatriates sitting in their high, ceilinged clubs, fanning themselves. They are drinking gin and tonics, and the clink of the ice is the soundtrack of the empire. You realize that this trade has fundamentally changed the way people live in the tropics. It has made the unbearable bearable. It has allowed the colonial powers to maintain their lifestyle of heavy woolen uniforms and afternoon teas in climates that actively fight against them. But the reach of the Ice King goes beyond the tropics. You cross the Atlantic in your mind, landing in London. You are walking down the Strand. You stop in front of a shop window. A crowd has gathered. You peer over their shoulders to see what they are looking at. Inside the window, sitting on a velvet cushion, is a massive block of Wenham Lake ice. It is a celebrity. You watch a man take a newspaper and hold it behind the block. You can read the print through the ice perfectly. It is that clear. The Londoners are mesmerized. They are used to the murky, thin ice skimmed from their own ponds, which tastes of weeds and mud. This American ice is like a diamond. Queen Victoria herself has requested a supply. You watch the shopkeeper polish the ice with a cloth, keeping it glistening. It is a luxury object, a piece of exotic Americana. Back in New England, the industry has reached its zenith. You stand on the shores of the ponds again. The scene has changed since those early, quiet days. Now it is a massive industrial operation. You see spur lines of the railroad running right up to the ice houses. The steam locomotives puff and chug, waiting to be loaded. The ice cars are double-walled, insulated with charcoal and sawdust. They are rolling refrigerators. You watch the trains pulling away, long snakes of yellow box cars heading for the ports. The harvest is no longer just for the ships, it is for the cities of America too. New York, Philadelphia, Baltimore. Every butcher shop, every fishmonger, every hotel needs ice. You see the Iceman becoming a standard figure in American life, the man with the leather shoulder pad and the iron tongs, delivering a block of winter to every kitchen door. But as you watch this bustling activity, you notice a subtle shift. A shadow is falling over the empire of natural ice. It is not a shadow of clouds, but a shadow of technology. The same steam power that hauls the ice trains is being turned toward a new purpose. You find yourself in a small, cluttered workshop in Florida, and later in Australia. You see men like Dr. John Gorey and James Harrison tinkering with strange machines. They are not looking at ponds. They are looking at compressors, pistons, and gases like ether and ammonia. You hear the rhythmic hiss, thump of a prototype machine. It is not a natural sound. It is the sound of chemistry and pressure. You watch as frost begins to form on a metal pipe. It is magic. They are making ice without winter. They are compressing gas to create heat, then expanding it to create cold. It is the reverse of the steam engine. You look at the ice that forms on the coils. It is not the clear, beautiful crystal of Wenham Lake. It is cloudy, opaque, sometimes smelling faintly of oil. But it is cold. And more importantly, it can be made anywhere. It can be made in Florida. It can be made in India. It can be made in the middle of a desert. Frederic Tudor, the old ice king, dismisses these machines. He calls it artificial and unhealthy. He believes people will always prefer the pure, God-given ice of nature. You watch him in his later years, walking through his gardens in Nahant, Massachusetts. He is surrounded by the fruits of his labor, quite literally. He hasn't just shipped ice, he has brought back plants. You see him tending to his garden, a stubborn old man who bent the world to his will. He dies in 1864, wealthy and vindicated, believing his empire will last forever. But you know the future. You watch the timeline accelerate. The machines get better. They get quieter, more efficient. You see the first ice factories opening in New Orleans, then in Texas. The Civil War cuts off the supply of northern ice to the south, forcing them to rely on the machines. By the time the war ends, the habit is formed. The artificial ice is cheaper. It is reliable. It doesn't depend on a cold winter in Boston. You watch the slow, agonizing decline of the natural ice trade. It is not a sudden crash, but a long, slow melt. For decades, the two exist side by side. The natural ice is the premium product, the craft, ice of its day. But the machines are relentless. You see the great fleet of white, sailed ice ships slowly dwindling. They are converted to carry coal or timber, or they are simply broken up for scrap. You return to the tropical ports. You stand in Calcutta again. The massive stone ice house is still there, but it is empty. The door hangs open. The straw on the floor is rotting. The air inside is musty and warm. The distribution network of ice wallers still exists, but they are carting blocks made in a factory down the street. The magic of the frozen water trade has evaporated. The miracle has become a utility. You travel back to the ponds of New England. It is the early 20th century now. You see the great wooden ice houses falling into disrepair. The paint is peeling. The ramps are sagging. A fire breaks out in one, a common fate for these giant tinderboxes filled with sawdust, and it burns fiercely, illuminating the night sky. No one rebuilds it. The economics just don't work anymore. The electric refrigerator is on the horizon. The little buzzing box that will put a glacier in every kitchen is coming. You walk along the edge of Fresh Pond. The railroad tracks are rusting, overgrown with weeds. The great spur lines that once carried thousands of tons of crystal are silent. The horses are gone. The plows are rusting in barns. The lake is returning to its natural state. You look out at the water. It is winter again. The ice has formed, smooth and gray. But there are no grid lines etched into it. There is no sawdust on the shore. It is just a frozen pond. A few children are skating near the edge, their laughter drifting across the ice. The industrial conquest is over. The harvest of the cold has ended. You think about the legacy of this strange, brief era. It lasted less than a century, but it changed everything. It taught the world to crave cold. It created a global supply chain for perishable food. It allowed fresh meat to travel on trains, fresh fish to travel inland, and cold drinks to be served in the jungle. The Ice King is gone, but his kingdom is everywhere. Every time you hear the hum of a refrigerator, or the rattle of an air conditioner, or the clink of ice in a glass, you are hearing the echo of Frederic Tudor's dream. You sit down on a fallen log near the water's edge. The sun is setting, casting a long golden path across the ice. The wind is picking up, rustling the dry leaves of the oak trees. It is a lonely, peaceful sound. The frantic energy of the harvest, the shouting of the men, the creaking of the ships. It has all faded into history. You pick up a small stone and slide it across the ice. Skitter, skitter, stop. It slides effortlessly, just as the blocks once did. You marvel at the audacity of it all. That for a brief moment in human history, we didn't make cold, we hunted it. We captured it in the north and sailed it to the south, fighting the sun every inch of the way. It was a trade built on melting, a business model based on a disappearing asset. And yet, it worked. The twilight deepens. The air turns blue and then purple. The stars begin to emerge, sharp and cold. You feel the chill settling around you, but it is not a threatening cold. It is a quiet, resting cold. The pond is sleeping. The trees are sleeping. The history books are closed. You wrap your coat tighter, feeling the warmth of your own body against the chill. You are the only witness left to this silent landscape. The ghosts of the ice cutters, the horses, and the ships are gone. All that remains is the water, waiting for the spring thaw, just as it always has, long before the first saw cut into its skin. The journey is complete. The ships have sailed, the ice has melted, and the world has quieted down. Now, let us ease away from the history and into the night. The darkness around the pond is absolute now, soft and heavy like a velvet curtain. You can no longer see the far shore, only the faint, pale glow of the ice reflecting the starlight. The wind has died down completely, leaving behind a profound silence. It is the kind of silence that feels thick, insulating you from the world outside. You let your breathing synchronize with this stillness. In slow and deep, tasting the cool, clean air. Out, a long, gentle sigh that carries away the last of the day's tension. You imagine the snowflakes beginning to fall, one by one, drifting down from the vast darkness above. They land softly on the ice, adding their tiny weight to the frozen sheet. There is no sound when they land, just a soft accumulation of quiet. Your body feels heavy, sinking into the comfort of where you are resting. Your legs, your arms, your shoulders, they all feel loose and warm, protected from the cold. You are safe here, watching the winter from a distance. The story of the ice ships, the frantic activity of the docks, the heat of the tropics. It all feels like a dream you had a long time ago. It drifts away, dissolving like mist in the morning sun. All that is left is the steady, slow rhythm of the night. The world is turning slowly, carrying you into the shadows. There is nothing left to do. No schedules to keep, no cargoes to load, no oceans to cross. The work is done. The ledgers are closed. The ice is sleeping in the dark, and so are you. Let the quiet wash